Okay, hello everybody. I'm really excited to bring this video to you, and today we're going to cover the subject of a very particular posture or asana known as downward facing dog. I'm really excited to present to you some of the information that I have utilized to help my students gain a better understanding as to what this position can do for them and how to execute it in a way that ensures that they stay safe, that they stay effective, that they yield the maximum amount of results. Also, maybe to understand when it's time to leave striving for the physical body behind and step into some of the other areas of the posture. So I'm going to introduce you to our guests today. Those individuals are going to be here to help us learn and grow. And up here in the upper right-hand corner, I have selected a photograph of my fiance Carly, and down here, I have selected a photograph of Master Sri Trimolia Krishnamacharya, and to the right here, I selected a photograph of his pupil and student, later Master BKS Iyengar. Up here in the left-hand corner, I've selected an anatomy photograph so that it stays there as a kind of continual reference point for you. So everything that you see in yellow are muscles that are being stretched, and everything that you see in red or slight pink are some of the muscles that are being strengthened. So as we take a look at this photograph up here, we're already just getting a quick general idea as to the anatomical positioning of this body. And we're also getting to immediately see some of the differences between this photograph here, this photograph here, and this photograph here. How all of those things, they're all looking a little bit different. And so what I want to illustrate for you today is some of the ways in which this posture has been taught in the past that may not be serving yoga practitioners today. So anybody who's coming into yoga, anybody who's currently training in yoga, and anybody who is aspiring to train in yoga in the future. Yoga practice in America has really become a twofold process of serving the physical body and at the same time aspiring for yoga's original intention, which was self-realization. So Master Krishnamacharya down here, I'm of the opinion, after reading about Master Krishnamacharya, his life and what was important to him, that he was not doing yoga for the purposes of necessarily health of the physical body, although it would appear that he did later utilize asana to influence the health of the physical body. And there were many reasons for that, and that's a subject for another video. However, Master Iyengar really used asana for the health of the physical body. And you later discover that I believe that a huge influence for this, based upon my research, was because Master Iyengar, when he was younger, he was very sickly. He had tuberculosis and a number of other health ailments that he needed to heal. And he would later say this in his interviews. He would say, what of self-realization when I'm sick? Yeah, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but he would basically say, if my body's in pain and all of these things are going wrong with me, what's the point in even, being concerned with self-realization? And I understand the sentiment that he's coming from, and I happen to agree with him from my experience. If somebody is living in a great deal of pain in the body, it will be very, very difficult for them to have the strength to look beyond that pain. The ability to endure pain and to have the strength to look past it at something more subtle takes a tremendous amount of strength. So I'm going to pull over here to another application, and I want us to begin to get a basic understanding as to the anatomy of this position. So in case you weren't aware, muscles serve the purpose of moving bone. So here we have your skeleton. I want you to take a quick look at that, because this skeleton, just let this sink in. Some of the key things that I want to point out here to you are your spinal column, which exists there in the center, and I want you to take note of that shape. I want you to notice how the very top portion of the spine, and as you see, I'm only going to light up one of the vertebrae most likely. I'm going to pull that there. But those top vertebrae, those are called your cervical vertebra The middle is the thoracic vertebra, and down here are your lumbar vertebra. So the bottom section of the spine is the most easy to damage section of the spine because your hips are right here, and as you can see, the glutes are right here. So this section of the body is used quite heavily, the core. It's one of it's the center of the body. It's your core. So it is used very heavily, and it is very, very important that this section of your system be very strong, that you do have a deep sense of awareness at this section of your body so that you can feel when the spine may be in jeopardy. Now, all of the system, the bones, are moved by the muscles, and the bones are held together by these connective tissues here, which we've now put back onto the skeletal structure. So the bones are held together by connective tissues, and then the muscles move the bones via your ligamental system, and they receive commands from your central nervous system right there. So the only reason that muscles move is because you are inside of the central nervous system. You, the driver of this beautiful vehicle, are inside the central nervous system. Now, if we flash back over to our other video, or our other screen, and we take a look at Carly's position here, what I want you to notice is the general shape of her body. And I want you to pay close attention as to just how wonderful that shape looks. Just really let that sink in. Now I want you to take a look at, well, let's examine Iyengar's first. I want you to take a look at this shape here. And I want you to notice the shape of his body. And then I want you to notice all of these angles of Krishnamacharya's body, who, if we had to think of this in terms of lineage, although I'm not pictured here, it kind of goes Krishnamacharya, then Iyengar. Let's just say this is me, and then Carly, right? So information has been flowing down this line. And there are many, many more individuals who have influenced me, but I wanted you to keep those images in mind. We're going to take a look at Krishnamacharya still. Look at this line. I'm going to draw this in for you. I want you to see this here. Now you're starting to get an idea for the shapes that are being created by the bones underneath of the musculature, right? So remember, now imagine we peel the skin away and the musculature is residing underneath of the skin. Okay, so keep this image in mind, right? We're going to go back. Now, why is it that Carly's body can hold this shape? Why is it that Master Iyengar's body is holding this shape? And why is it that Krishnamacharya's body is holding this shape? Well, the major differences here are happening because of strength that is being expressed in each individual's body. So where they're expressing strength with their mind, and where each individual's body has developed enough spaciousness on the inside of the body. Because remember, the bones are the inside of the body. So if your bones do not have the capability of pushing through your tissue, if your tissue has become hard and dense, the overlining connective tissue, the fascial tissue, and the musculature itself can become hard and dense, the muscle fibers. There are many reasons for this, but as you can see, Krishnamacharya's body is unable to take an ideal position. And this has everything to do with the tension in his body. So there are two primary fronts for tension, in my opinion. The tension that exists within the physical tissue itself, and then tension that is being held residually inside of an individual's central nervous system. So in other words, or in another way of describing this, what could tension inside of the central nervous system be? Well, this would be stored mental, emotional trauma, stored emotion. So emotion that has gathered information from experience of your life that maybe you haven't fully been able to create clarity and understanding around, and you have not yet done the work at processing those emotions, and processing those thoughts and processing those experiences for total clarity. And so since the central nervous system has not went through the work yet, right? You can still do the work, but since you haven't done the work yet, there is tension inside the central nervous system that is keeping the musculature in a chronic state of contraction. And in addition to this, then you have the actual tension of the physical tissue itself, which there are a few reasons that could take place. So tension inside the musculature, let's draw your awareness down here to Krishnamacharya. We'll blow up the screen. So tension inside of the musculature can happen from a couple of different, well, there are multiple different ways, but let's look at two. One could be repetitive movement. So repetitive movement that you're doing in your day that is creating imbalances in the musculature. So if you think of the fact that you're walking all day, or perhaps you do a ton of squatting where you're using the quadriceps, and you develop an overt amount of tension in these muscles. So if you overtrain the quadriceps, then it's very likely then that you're going to experience problems at your pelvis and problems at your knees, because you're going to be tightening down that line of musculature. And it's going to have an effect at the bottom end of the muscle, and it's going to have an effect at the middle of the muscle. It's going to have an effect at the top of the muscle. And all of the muscles, everything that you do to your muscles and everything that you don't do is going to affect your skeletal structure. It's also going to affect your central nervous system, or in other words, it's going to affect your mind. And so if we look at Krishnamacharya here, we can actually see the tension in his hamstrings here. We can see that tension, and the tension begins to reduce a little bit here. But because that tension is so great, it's actually rolling his hip. You can see how his hip is rolling under in this direction, right? And he was known to be a bit of an aggressive guy. So you can see how, based upon how his muscles are being activated here and in the triceps, how he's really tucking his chin super hard, that he's being incredibly forceful in this position, which he was known to be incredibly forceful. The stories that you would hear, direct accounts of what it was like by Master BKS Iyengar in order to be his pupil, was not the kind of like tender image of a yoga teacher that you're getting in today's American, fitness, gym club kind of yoga classes. In fact, that personality trait, I can see, if you do some research, seem to have been passed to Iyengar. They often called Iyengar the Lion of Pune. So he lived in Pune, so they called him the Lion of Pune, not the tender, sweet Iyengar of Pune. I personally am not doing this video in terms of whether that this was right of them or wrong of them. I'm not going to look at that in this video. I have my opinions on right and wrong based upon experiences. For now, we're really just going to look at what is happening anatomically. So how was it then that we were able to create this kind of a position within Carly? Well, first of all, I began addressing this posture from the inside out. So every time I'm working with an individual, I'm always addressing the fact that underneath of all of this, underneath of everything that you see here, is your central nervous system. And what's inside the central nervous system is the accumulated data that you've gathered through the entirety of your life. And this data has came in to your system via the organs of your perception. What are those organs? That's your touch, your sight, your smell, your sound, and your taste. And those organs of perception, they are pointed outwards, and they do nothing but gather information. So if you lived for 12 years, you have 12 years worth of data that you've gathered. If you lived for 15 years, you have 15 years worth of data. So it depends on what you've been exposed to, what experiences you've had. And then the more identified you become with very specific stories, specific memories, and specific imaginations, that begins to form what we call your personality. And then your personality begins to find expression through this central nervous system. Now, since the body is at play on the mind as well, how you use your body is also radically affecting the way in which your personality is being developed. So it's very important that you move your body, a lot. In fact, you'll recognize if with any sense of awareness that the more you move your body, the better it gets. So I began working with Carly from the inside out, addressing her personality. And then we immediately go to the bones. So once we start to look at the bones, what I would do, and Carly was CrossFitting before she first started to come to me. So there were a number of extreme muscular imbalances in her body when she first started. And some of those imbalances existed at the quadriceps here. And you can see just how many muscles that we have here. So she was squatting very heavy. She had very tight lats that were preventing her arms from going fully over her head. She had an extreme shoulder injury to the muscles underneath of the shoulder here. So these little tiny muscles right in here. And that's going to play a role. The infraspinatus, the supraspinatus, the teres minor, all of these little muscles here that you're seeing light up. These muscles, and we're going to fade that one, and you can see how there's still some muscles underneath of there. She had sustained a shoulder injury in college, and that's going to be a topic in today's downward dog video, because I want to take a look at those shoulder muscles. You can see how small they are, and if you pay close attention, you can actually see how easy they would be to damage, right? And you can see how the arm muscles here, the triceps are inserting into the upper part of the shoulder. And here's the subscapularis, and we're going to go ahead and take that out as well so you can start to see just a little bit of what's going on underneath of here. Now look at all these little tiny muscles inside of that shoulder, right? We're going to tilt that back, let you see this from an overview. And I hope that you are finding this fascinating right now, because to me, anatomy is extremely fascinating. What's more fascinating is that you have the capability of actually feeling this anatomy from the inside. So if you happen to damage some of these little muscles, which these are commonly called the rotator cuff, because they form a series of muscles that allow the palm to be turned open, like you can see here. You can see how the thumb is turned away from the body. So those muscles have to be active in order for you to be able to turn that open. So there we put the scapula back on, and you can see how all of those muscles would have held your musculature in place. They would have held your shoulder bone in place. So it's very easy to overstretch those muscles. Let's just go ahead and put them all back on now. Now you can see we have the posterior deltoid here. We have the medial deltoid right here. There you have the infraspinatus, and you can see how that's layered underneath of this deltoid. Let's hide that. Look at that right there. Look how fantastic that is. Let's hide that there. And you can see how these muscles are actually reaching over to that upper arm bone known as the humerus. So we're going to go ahead and go back now, and we're going to take a look at Master Iyengar's body. So I'm of the opinion that these two incredible individuals, they were on a journey of understanding and a journey of self-realization, and they did not begin masters, and they were developing themselves through their whole life. So if we take a look at this shape right here, we can see these angles that are happening in the shoulder joint. Now, what you discover if you study anatomy is that Master Iyengar is actually experiencing an over degree of what is called flexion of the shoulder joint. And if you pay attention, if you look at his musculature, particularly in here and particularly at the arm, what you could conclude is I don't have his hands in the photograph, so let's take a quick look at Carly's hands and the feet. These are forming two anchor points into the ground, a little bit like a triangle, right, or a pyramid. So these are anchor points into the ground that is creating friction against the ground. So you also see that Master Iyengar's head is compressed against the ground. All of these combined, in addition to the fact that he is using his mind in a very soft way, he's not activating his musculature, so he's treating this position as a stretching position, most likely for his lat muscles here, the intercostal muscles here, the serrated anterior muscles that are there, And you can see that because there is no visible contraction to the musculature. But if we actually look down to his thighs, specifically right here and here, we can see that contraction taking place. So if we want to consider, or you should definitely consider, that within any asana, gravity is always pulling everybody down. And this is playing a huge role as to why we should put certain asanas in certain places, the effect of certain asanas on the musculature, and the effect of certain asanas on the subtler bodies as well. So this deep, intimate knowledge of gravity's effect on the system, using gravity to create specific results within the body and within the subtler bodies. In yogic culture, they do not view the system the same way that we do here in the United States. They actually refer to all of the various aspects of the system just as subtler and subtler bodies. The physical body is called the food body, or anamaya kosha. And so to me, I think that that's really fascinating, because when you consider that gravity is at play, then you start to really, really understand that how you sequence, the ways in which you sequence your postures, is going to radically affect a human being in such a very, very big way. But for this video, we're only looking at the gross body, so the physical body. So what is happening here is, with Master Iyengar having gravity pushing straight down, you could infer that joint would be pressing down right in this direction. Now, I'm not sure if how many of you who will watch this video have done any kind of jiu-jitsu, but I've been doing martial arts my whole life. I'm 34 years old at the time of this video. I did my very first deadlift at 3 years old, started doing martial arts by 5 and 6 years old, and found grappling sports by 14, 15, and 16. And jiu-jitsu as an art form is understanding human anatomy so that I could take a joint like this, know the anatomy of it, turn the anatomy against my opponent in such a way that I either destroy that section of my opponent's body, or they willingly submit to the fact that they've lost the match, and then we continue forward. So in my opinion, it's very, very likely that Master Iyengar sustained some type of shoulder injury at some point in time in his career. And if you're practicing yoga today, it's very likely that you're doing it for the health of the body. So if you're doing the posture like this, it's very likely that you're going to be walking yourself slowly to an injury unknowingly, okay? You're not doing this intentionally. In fact, you probably heard that you should press into your shoulders from some type of a yoga teacher somewhere along your journey. And I want to congratulate you on picking up yoga in your life, but I want you to understand that most of the yoga teachers that you're going to experience know nothing of the anatomy that I'm sharing with you. They did go through typically 200 hours of training, although now there's a phenomenon happening in yoga today where people are skipping the teacher training in general. They're just getting an Instagram account, and since they were a dancer at one point in time in their life, and maybe they have a degree of flexibility and they've read a few quotes from the Buddha and they watch a few yoga videos online and all this stuff, they now, because they're so excited, right? They're just eager. They're eager to help. They're eager to feel significant. They want to get started, but yet they don't want to go through all of this hard work of understanding the body. So I understand why it's happening, but at the same time, we as recipients, we're coming to yoga teachers with problems that we want problem solved. And so I'm doing my very best within my school to ensure that anybody who trains under me, that they are very highly trained and they are held to the highest levels of standards. And whenever they are falling from grace, I guess you could say, they definitely hear in a very loving way. I keep pressing upon them to do better for themselves, and especially for the individuals that are coming to us for help. So if we come back and we look at these little muscles, and we're going to flash back, take a look at that there. So take a look at Iyengar's shoulder. Boom. Now you come back, you look at these muscles. You could infer how easy it would be if you overstretched any of these muscles to end up damaging one of these muscles permanently. Now, if you have ever known anybody to have a shoulder injury, you know that shoulder injuries are life-changing, and life-changing for good. And one of the things that I want you to understand about the decisions that we make is that freedom is a scary thing for many people because freedom requires responsibility. Once you make a choice, you got to live with the consequences of that choice. And sometimes we make choices not knowing fully the consequences. And for me, that's why one of the things that I found that was so beneficial, what I'm so grateful for martial arts for, because we're then left with two choices. Do I not act at all? Which, hey, if we don't act at all, we're not going to do anything in life. So martial arts really gives you the ability to take action and learn quickly. You got to learn quickly. So as we come up here and we examine Carly, right, what we start to see is that the shoulder is looking very different. You can actually see right here, you can see how the musculature is being activated. So she's actually utilizing these big muscles on her back here, the lat muscles. So the lat muscle is being engaged, this big muscle here, and that communicates to these external rotator muscles. And in addition to her lat muscles being engaged, you can see that the tricep is engaged, right? Can you see that right there? This little angle here and here, that occurs when the tricep is engaged. You can see that her forearms are engaged. You can see here, if we zoom into her hands, you can even see that none of the knuckles of her hands are coming up off the ground. That's very important, that all of the knuckles of your hands are pressed firm into the ground, that your fingers are spread out, not aggressively, but they are spread out, and all of your knuckles are firmly placed, and that you can feel the weight of your body on the pad of the thumb especially. You want to feel that down here on the pad of the hand. And you can see this straight line that is beginning to occur. And you can actually see that she is stabilizing this shoulder joint using the anatomy of the shoulder. And the shoulder is at its most stable when it is externally rotated. And you can also see that she has not created any overt states of flexion. So like her spine isn't coming here and then her shoulders are going there. Her arm is, creating this big compression, this big angle right here at the shoulder joint. So if you happen to have a destabilized shoulder joint, then there are strength training, bodybuilding exercises that you can do to strengthen this section of your body. And if you'd like any help with that, I'm definitely excited, and myself or one of my coaches would love to develop a routine for you to help strengthen your shoulder joints and to bring balance back to this region of your body. Now let's continue to the legs. So we're going to address the appendicular skeleton first, and that would be all of the limbs, and then we're going to address your axial skeleton, which would be your spinal column, your rib cage, and your skull. Now, if we look at Carly's body here, what we begin to see is, using a little bit of imagination, you could imagine how her anal outlet would come straight this direction. That's really important to remember, because you want to consider where the anal outlet is in relation to the bottom end of the sacrum and the effects that the sacrum would have on the shape of the spinal column itself. You can also see how Carly's head is relaxed. So ideally, we would like this spinal column to be completely straight. And when we have limitations on the back side of the body, and it's not just one section. Master Krishnamacharya has a lack of space across this whole line of his body. There's not very much spaciousness there for the tibia and the fibula of the lower leg to move through the calf. There's not very much space for the femur to move through the thigh and hamstring muscles. There's not very much space inside of his glute muscles, his medial glute muscles, his external obliques and spinal erector muscles, his lat muscles, his trap muscles, all of these big rhomboid muscles. He's missing space. He's missing inner space. And since his personality was one of fierceness, he is just sort of aggressively demanding of his body. So I would not be surprised if, had they done some sort of autopsy on his body, researched his body, I bet that at this section of his body here, we would probably very likely see some sort of signs of injury at his lumbar spinal column. He was probably even suffering various disc herniations at different times in his journey. And I want you to keep in mind, though, that Master Krishnamacharya did not do yoga for himself for the health of the body. He did yoga for self-realization. And again, I don't know the man personally, so I'm not saying that because we sat down and have a conversation. I'm only inferring that based upon interviews of people who trained under him personally, as well as his own works, the words that came out of his own mouth. And so he was doing yoga for self-realization. If you're doing yoga for self-realization alone, then the health of the physical body can be a hindrance. And so we see that taking place with the story of Gautama Siddhartha, who destroyed his physical body in an effort to obtain self-realization. So many of you may not know this, but you can go out and Google this. There are pictures of an emaciated Buddha. So how does one prevent this from happening? Okay, that's what we're going to cover for you. Now, ideally, you should do these kind of trainings under the guise of a coach. Okay, if you're new to this, if you're an amateur, you will be so benefited by having an intelligent mentor in your life to help you navigate this unknown terrain faster. Of course, you can go it on your own, but you would benefit tremendously for having a mentor. So what we need to do here to ensure that you really stay safe here is what I want you to do is I always want you to keep your spinal column inside of your awareness with anything that you do. Yoga, lifting weights, picking up your kids, getting in and out of the car, getting into the tub, going swimming, anything you do, keep your spinal column and the health of your spinal column in your awareness. And to adjust this position here, what we would want to do for Krishnamacharya is we would want to stop this cue from happening, right? We would say, hey there, Master Krishnamacharya, how about instead of pressing your heels to the ground, which I know some of you have heard that cue, and the reason you're hearing that cue is because they want you to stretch your hamstrings, which is fantastic. But this pressing your heels to the ground cue is only appropriate once we've created a sufficient level of space through this section of the body. Until then, it's really inappropriate and very dangerous to press your heels to the ground. So how we can correct this is you can actually begin by bending your knees. If you bend your knees and allow your heels to be lifted off the ground, like so, then the natural effect is that you can create a straighter spinal column. And in fact, I'm just drawing a nice little stick figure right over Iyengar here. Boom, right there. Just like that. Now, this would have given Master Krishnamacharya the ability to keep his spine nice and straight and to get a little bit more stretch, because for him, he probably would have needed a little bit more stretch through his lat muscles here. So this position probably would have very likely stretched his lat muscles, but there would have been a point where he would have obtained a certain level of range of motion in which at that time the position would have needed to then become a strengthening position at this section of the shoulder. So it really is a case-by-case basis depending upon the person. Female practitioners often display too much softness at this section of the body and they're at risk of shoulder injury. Male bodies typically express too much tension at this section of the body and they need more range of motion through here. So when we do the external rotation component of the shoulder, you want to be thinking about the shoulder coming in this direction, which requires one to have the ability to activate the lat. And if you're not quite for sure how to do that, please, I encourage you, get a private session with me. Do a private coaching. We can do it online. There's no reason that you have to come into the studio, but definitely you can come into my studio and get private coaching with me or one of the coaches trained by me. So let's look at some of the bonus aspects of this position here. So one of the things that you're going to keep noticing in each one of these pictures at this section of the body, you can see that each one of these individuals here is pulling the navel up and in. Now this has much more of a yogic connotation. You see, yoga has these specific names for subtler aspects of the body that we're not too familiar with Western medicine, Western education. And some of this is because there aren't any machines that have been invented yet that could detect these things. And I'm not sure that there ever will be. But if you become still enough within your own system, you will absolutely begin to discover that these things are a living reality within your system. And what they are is they are places in which we can seal off the flow of your life energy, and they're called bandhas. So the one at the base of the spine is called the Mula Bandha. The one at the middle of the spine is called Uddiyana Bandha, and then there's a bandha at the pit of the throat called Jalandhara Bandha. Now, when you do downward facing dog, the two bandhas that are activated are at the base of the spine and at the navel. And this begins to change the flow of your life energy, or what the yogis called prana. Prana. And prana comes into the body via your breathing. So bandha, from a yogic culture standpoint, was meant to redirect the flow of energy back to the crown of your head. Back to the crown of your head. That is one of the yogic components to this position, is creating the flow of energy reversing, because gravity is typically pulling energy in a downward direction because we stand in an upright position most of the time, right? We're standing in an upright position most of the time. And since we're standing upright, energy is usually, again, being pulled down to the base of the spine, because we're standing upright. So energy is being pulled down to the base of the spine, or the first energy center. So we can go over the deeper components of that here at the end of the video. So if we scroll into the navel here, what we actually can see is that from a muscular standpoint, when you activate the pelvic floor, which is the muscles at the very base of the spine, you're going to be strengthening and rejuvenating all of the muscles that surround the genital organ and those interior muscles. So some of the things that would be beneficial for the male body in utilizing this pelvic floor activation is the fact that the prostate gland is located around the area of the anus, or the anal outlet. And that area can become stagnant. It gets stagnant really easy. That stagnation then can lead to things, lead to diseases in that area, maybe potentially prostate cancer, right? I'm not saying here in this video that these could help, cure prostate cancer. This is not that kind of a video at all. But if you could infer by, keeping these areas healthy, active, then you would definitely be decreasing your risk of disorder when you get older. Now, here at the navel, you see that this is being drawn in. So muscularly, what is happening is you are strengthening your transversal abdomen. You're strengthening the innermost portion of your abdomen. So we're going to circle over here. So here we have the external oblique. And we're just going to take these off so that you can start to see what is actually going on. Bam, right there. We've taken that off. Hide. And you can see we've taken off a little bit more than we should have, so we're going to put that back on. Hide. Right here you have your rectus abdominis. Now I want you to notice here with your anatomy, the shape of the striations impacts how the muscle can be used against the bone. So we're going to take off your rectus abdominis. And I want you to see how under here, this inside portion, that is the transverse abdomen. This is your internal oblique. So you have an internal oblique and you have an external oblique. So we're going to hide that, and we're going to hide that. Now here you are. These are your transverse abdomen. Right there. And you can see how they actually wrap underneath of these big lat muscles. Can you see that there? You can see how that transverse abdomen actually comes right underneath of that big lat muscle. Then underneath there you can see the spinal erector muscles and more. So the body is incredibly complex. But let's go ahead and hide this here. Now we've hidden it. And what we get to see under here, right? This is a sac that is encasing that's encasing your digestive organs. So it is encasing the digestive organs. And we're going to hide that now. We're going to hide some more stuff. And we're going to get under here so that you can see the digestive organs. Now that we can see the digestive organs here, what I want you to envision, right, and now that we're underneath of here, actually, while that we're here, you can see these bottom ends of the body, the pelvic floor areas, right? Kind of a fun view. There's a lot of little tiny muscles here that you want to be strengthening to help keep this section of the body healthy and safety. Most of the time when you are, let's say, going to the bathroom, these muscles end up relaxing. They need to be strengthened, especially for women after childbirth, right? This area of the body needs to be strengthened to rejuvenate the health of the genital organs and to bring about safety and stability back to the pelvis, because the muscles on the outside of the body here, the big glute muscles, those are playing a role in pelvic safety, but these internal muscles are playing a role in pelvic safety, okay? Now, if we hide this here, we're gonna hide the other side too. Now, I'm gonna flip our model upside down. And the reason that I'm doing that is because I want you to imagine how gravity would then pull all of those organs down just by gravity alone. So if we go back here, gravity's pulling down. So that means all those organs are pushing upward, and they're actually pushing upward against the wall of the diaphragm here. Now, if you're actually creating an active contraction to your abdominal muscles and an active contraction to your pelvic floor, you're going to be pushing those organs up into the body even more, which is going to massage those organs. It's going to help you with your digestion. So it's not uncommon for people to have sometimes 10 to 15 pounds of compacted fecal matter, undigested food from eating things like too much red meat and steak, foods that are not easily digested by the body, or the digestive system has slowed because maybe you've been poisoning your body, your liver, with toxic chemicals like alcohol for years or decades, or perhaps you've been creating a toxic environment in your body simply by eating foods that do not agree with your system. So each of us have sometimes intolerances to food, right? So and a great example of this would be, why can some people eat peanuts and they're okay, and other people can't eat peanuts? So as you can see here, those organs would be pushing up. But let's hide these, because now if we hide all of this stuff, right there, you actually begin to see your spinal column popping out, right? And underneath of there, you can see these muscles that are being highlighted. Those are your psoas muscles. So a lot of times people experience back pain, and it's coming from muscles deep inside of the body and not on the back of the body at all. So I'm going to hide this, and I'm going to hide this. A lot of stuff to hide. Actually, you know what? Let's just do this. Boom. We're going to just take off the whole system quickly. Now, right there, that's your diaphragm. Can you see that muscle, that dome-shaped muscle right there? Now, that is a muscle like any other muscle. So what do I mean by that? That means it can be strengthened and it can be weakened. Now, muscles get stronger via resistance, okay? That's how they get stronger. You put them under pressure, and then the body says, uh-oh, we were energetically inefficient. We need to get stronger here. You create micro tears in the fibers, and then your body sends out your little builder warriors. They're called cytokines, in which they bring all of the amino acids and proteins back to the body, back to that section to heal it. And it's an inflammatory response, and it's an immune system response. So it's really important for the health of your body that you continuously and regularly exercise. But take that diaphragm in, and you can see that the diaphragm is quite literally separating the belly from the chest cavity. So we'll turn our model right back upside down. So that means, when I heard this a long time ago, to belly breathe. The reason that I think that this cue came about was because somewhere along the way, I'm going to rip off all this musculature. Somewhere along the way, somebody recognized that their people were not breathing through the full lobe of the lung. Most people breathe very shallow at the upper end of the chest, right? So they breathe kind of up here. And I can't highlight just the top part of the lung, so I'm attempting to just highlight these bones. But they breathe through that upper part of the lung, very short and shallow. So in an attempt to get them to breathe and use more of their diaphragm, I believe that this instruction came about. But when you actually uncover the anatomy, what you really discover is that lungs are for breathing, which is up in the chest, and bellies, because of this spinal column here and the fact that it demands stability in order to be safe. If any of you have ever had a disc herniation, right, you know that back pain is incredibly debilitating. And if you sever that spinal cord that's in there, that's even more of a problem. And that bellies are for bracing. So bellies are for bracing and lungs should be for breathing. So you need to be able to create an awareness. You need to be able to create a new level of awareness at your abdomen here. You need to be drawing your navel into your body, pulling it back towards the spine and keeping it there chronically. You should be bringing your awareness regularly and routinely to the bottom end of the body, even if you're not doing downward dog, and keeping those muscles lifted in so that these sections of the body are maintaining their health, that you are staying strong here and that you're strengthening the diaphragm. So if we go back to our downward dog video, what you begin to discover is that by pushing all of those organs up towards the diaphragm, a pressure is going to be building up into the chest. Now, this pressure is actually really good. Now, what you're going to experience is resistance within the rib cage. It's going to feel more difficult to breathe, which is a good thing because it's like doing a biceps curl for that diaphragm muscle that we saw dome-shaped under there, because the diaphragm is the muscle that's responsible for helping to aid in your respiratory function, right? Now, this position of downward facing dog is going to help you to strengthen your diaphragm, which is going to give you the ability to recover from any potential respiratory infection that maybe you might incur at any point in time in your lifetime. This position is also going to help you to open up the overlining tissue that would not allow for your lungs to expand fully. So many of you have completely lost the ability to take a deep breath because you have effectively put your body into a kind of a flesh corset or like a flesh straitjacket. We could actually see that here with Krishnamacharya's body. The tension in his body would be really tight. I bet it was difficult for him to actually, breathe very, very deep out through his back, out through his chest, out through the side walls, and allow those beautiful lungs of his to truly take a full breath. So I hope that this video was helpful for you. There's so much more anatomy to cover, and I would love to cover that with you. I'm actually creating an online course full of anatomy videos that will cover other positions other than just this downward facing dog position. And we're going to go into that anatomy deeper, as well as the subtler aspects of these poses, where we're going to be covering manomaya kosha, pranamaya kosha, vijnanamaya kosha, all of these other really cool subtler aspects of the system. I'm also building an online memberships portal for you right now, where you'll be able to have access to pre-recorded trading sessions, all designed by me and at varying levels of ability that you could have access to right from your phone, your living room, where you could train with the systems that I'm using inside of my studio every day to be able to create positions such as this one right here. You could also learn your own personalized routine. I've created a foundational course that I train every student in the beginning, that gives them the ability to have a personal self-practice, a practice of their own, that is an updated version, you could call it, a modified version of Krishnamacharya's Ashtanga Vinyasa system. Now, the word Ashtanga, just so we know, was originally coined by the great Saint Patanjali. So I am also instructing the students all the time in the 8 limbs of yoga. I like to refer to them as mountains more than limbs, the 8 mountains of yoga. But since there is, as you can see, a left side of the body, a right side of the body, left side of the body, right side of the body, a top to the body, a front and a back of the body. The body deeply requires balance. It deeply requires balance, and your daily life is continuously pushing the body out of balance. So this very intelligent yet simple system that I have created gives you the ability to know exactly how to move your body back to zero, how to move it back to balance. So if you'd like to learn that system so that you could train at home, if you'd like any part of this video, please leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought of this video. And as always, thank you so much for watching this video. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Also hit the notification bell so that you can stay up to date when I post new information on various subjects. And I'm hoping to get lots of comments from you guys as to subject matter that you would like to see. And if you would like to have exclusive access to that membership portal, if you want to be a part of its construction, because it's under construction now, we're going to be running a special offer for the founding members to have lifetime access. So if you want access to that and you want to be part of it, then you could help fund its construction. So please just drop a comment. Let me know if you want access to that, because we would love to have you be a part of our community and be a part of this next evolution in yoga here in America. And I want to close this video with saying thank you to Masters Krishnamacharya and Masters BKS Iyengar. Without these individuals, as well as many others, I would not be here today. And the amount of gratitude that I owe to these two beautiful individuals for everything that they did during their lifetimes to share their heart, to share their wisdom, to give their life to enhance the lives of people around them. It is a gift that is reverberating throughout the globe and inside the hearts and the minds of countless individuals. I have many, many more individuals to thank. I want to thank Master Arnold Schwarzenegger, who many of you might be quite surprised by that, but Master Arnold is very much a master of the physical body too, and his influence on me has radically impacted my ability to do this here. I want to thank my father. My father gave me my very first lessons in how to train and train effectively, and he has never once not positively encouraged me to move forward with my whole heart, and he really laid the foundations for me to know how to train. And if it wasn't for him being so passionate and eager, laying me on his chest to do the bench press at 4 years old, teaching me how to deadlift at 3 years old, then the wisdom that I am sharing with you today, it wouldn't be here. So if I have done anything in my life, and I'm actually going to paraphrase a quote from Master Iyengar, if I have done anything in my life, it's because I have stood on the shoulders of giants. And I want to have a special I want to especially thank Carly, who has been just such a wonderful person to work with, both inside of the yoga arena and then as my partner outside of the yoga arena as well. And we have a wonderful relationship both inside the training and outside. And I want to thank all of you for taking the time to watch this video. And the final thank you is I want to send a very special thank you to my guru, Sadguru Jaggi Vasudev, for continuously and always removing the darkness that is within me. So until then, till the next video, namaskaram everybody, and Nishkala Tattva Jiva Mukti. For one who is unwavering in their attention, liberation cannot be denied to them. So I hope that you find liberation for yourself. Have a beautiful day.